welcome to Tryhard XL. So this is a reworked version of the map Tryhard, a map that I made quite a while ago, and was sort of an experiment to try and make a tighter map so that energy weapons would be, well, very well performing. The unfortunate side effect, of course, was that secondary weapons were also really powerful. And so there were two main criticisms for the map. One was that the map was just too tight. You really didn't have that much space to move around, which obviously made the secondaries very powerful. And the other criticism was that the map's color scheme was a little too intense. And so these are the two big things that I have essentially worked on. And I pretty much built the map from scratch. And I changed two major things. First, I designed the map to be quite a bit more open. So this is the red room. And the second thing that I changed was I made the colors a lot milder. So what I did was I still used a bunch of colored lights and colored bevels. But the difference is I mixed in a bunch of white lights, sort of white neutral lights. So these are not just the decals, but there are also no shadow point light entities, which means you basically have these spherical lights that give off a fair bit of ambient light. And I think blending in sort of natural white light with these colored lights actually works really quite well in turning these otherwise very intense lights much milder. So yeah, this is the red room, which normally would have ended about here and would have only been about this high. So this extra 2 units of segment height is a change. And then the area or the little pocket that allows you to go into the wind tunnel is also very more open. The wind tunnel is still a default segment and leads into the blue room. Now if you move around, this used to be a very red tunnel. I still wanted to keep at least some red in this tunnel, so I put these lights in that I would say are very mild, since now we also have these white lights. And then there's these little edge lights that are kind of the indicator that, oh yeah, by the way, the red room is that way. So this is the room that was normally called the white room. Originally, I thought it was going to be called the fans because I had a large fan in this room, even in the vanilla version. But everybody just called it the white room, which makes sense. So in the white room, this is also a little bit more open. And this leads to, obviously, the wind tunnel, which takes you to the cavern area. You can also go to the super area, and then there's the infamous ramp area now. The ramp area is one of the few areas that is pretty much as tight as it was in the original release, with the exception of this energy center addition over here. So this can act as both sort of a desperate cover, but you can also recharge your weapons here, which is quite nice. And then we get to the blue room, and this I think is the area that changed the most. I made this room considerably bigger. I want to say this is twice as, if not almost 3 times bigger than the original version. So this is much higher. The total height is pretty much 10 segments. Not 10 segments, sorry, 10 units. And as you can tell, there's plenty of room to move around here. So you can have all sorts of dogfights and whatnot in here. You can still spam creepers from the red room into blue room, but obviously with this much room to dodge, the creepers shouldn't be that much of a problem. The ramp, of course, is kind of a precarious, dangerous area, so you know, be very careful when going there. It's definitely avoidable. It's also worth pointing out that the connector into the super room is also twice as wide. It used to be much tighter. Now you can have a little bit more space to work with when pushing into the super area. It's worth pointing out that you can sort of pre-fire the super through the wind tunnel if you want to. Not so much from the actual middle or main entrance. And then moving on to the green area. This is the same thing, the little green connector into the caverns. And then the cavern area is another one that got a pretty substantial expansion. So as you can see, the pillar now has this gap in the middle where you can just basically dogfight in this room much more easily. So the map now has 2 pretty much dedicated dogfighting areas. Obviously the blue room, and then the orange caverns. It's also worth pointing out that the super room also is a little bit expanded. It didn't get as huge of an expansion as the light blue room or the cavern area, but it's still substantially larger. And then this little connector into the red room is also quite a bit larger. It used to be just kind of a default segment curve, and now it sort of is a much, I believe this is about 3 default segments wide, so you can kind of come from different angles. It's worth pointing out that the 2 power-ups can spawn here, so still if you're in red room you can kind of pre-fire impulse and whatnot and still kind of suppress this area, but there's at least, you know, kind of more space to work with. You can kind of dodge and cover and take cover here for a second if you need to. So overall, I would say as far as movement is concerned, there's a lot more flexibility on the map now. And overall, I would say the color should also be a lot milder. I also made a conscious effort to try and use textures that are fairly neutral, so I would use the kind of the white tiles from the OM set, and I would use these sort of plain gray tiles from the Titan set, so that it would be just this very kind of easily, it would have very good visibility overall, and just these simple sort of mild colors overall. I would say the cave area is still somewhat intense, but then again it's just kind of yellow, so that's not too bad. And the only thing that I think is perhaps a little bit more intense than it could be is perhaps the green light here. Personally, it doesn't really bother me. I really like the color itself. But yeah, overall, I think this map is now considerably milder and just easier to work with than it used to be. And I personally find it a fair bit more fun to fly around in. I think that even the tiny sort of, oh, let's add an extra, you know, default segment of space here and there already makes a pretty huge difference. So yeah, overall, this is the idea, and I hope this kind of addresses the main criticisms that people had for this map, and for those that perhaps did not like the original version, will hopefully give this newer version a try.